Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 244 of The Ball is Round. My name is Andy Coronado, and tonight on the show, we got part two of the post-mortem time for CF Montreal. We'll give our end-of-season evaluation of the midfielders and attackers of CF Montreal. Roses FC with a tough first-leg loss against AFC Toronto, and some new, not-so-new faces are announced for FC Supra du Québec. As always, guys, tonight I'm joined by the one and only Elias Grigoriadis. How we doing, Elias?
Doing all right. We're doing all right. There's a little bit of a chill in the air.
Uh,
So when we get some soup,
uh,
I'm loving it. Try not to think
Speaking
too
of
much about
soup,
soccer.
man. Speaking of soup, yesterday was rough because there was the Toronto Blue Jays game against the LA Dodgers, and I went over to some friend's house to watch the
Mm.
game. And one thing led to another, and Andy Coronado got a little too happy, and today he's feeling it.
Wow, Andy Coronado's happy that the Blue Jays lost. Damn,
Hell yeah. And
that's
I said in
crazy.
this show, I cannot see Toronto win anything. So, but no,
I appreciate the level of hating. I appreciate it.
but anyways, it was a fun night. It was a fun. I was in Ottawa actually, ironically enough, because I know that the Habs were playing against Ottawa, and so yeah, it was a fun night, fun night. Hey Robbie, thank you for joining us tonight. So guys, we got a big show. As you guys heard the intro, we have a lot of topics to cover. But more importantly, just like last week, we have the post-mortem for CF Montreal. But this time around, we'll be talking about the midfielders and forwards. But before we get started, what happened there? Just a quick reminder that if you listen to the show and like what you hear and see, click on the subscribe button to support The Ball is Round. While you're at it, make sure to also subscribe to all of our social media platforms for daily updates. All right, let's get right into it, Elias. Elias, what the hell just happened to me? Did you see me just like
Yeah, I saw your brain like burp. It was hilarious.
I'll be good. I'll be good. All right. So, first player. Let's start with Victor Lotori, who played 40 games this season and had 2 goals and won the Defensive Player of the Year award. The fans graded him 6.9 out of 10. What did you think of Victor Lotori this season?
Look, I mean, the stats speak for themselves. The stats, the awards, they speak for themselves, right? The only, one of only two players to have featured in every single game this season. Defensive Player of the Year, which I think could have gone to a couple players, but definitely not undeserving of it. He definitely earned that with the work ethic, and I think he surprised a lot of people. I think it's obvious that it took him a while to adapt to MLS and to the speed, the physicality, the technical requirements, and once he really found himself, I think that he was playing at an extremely high level. So I'm going to give him a 6.5 because of how long it took him to kind of get his feet set. But if you're going just on the back half, for me personally, he's getting like a 7.5 or an 8 because he was excellent. He was okay to excellent in the second half of the season, right? That was his range, which again, given the season that this club had, okay to excellent is a fantastic range. And so, yeah, Robbie's saying 6. I think that's fair, because it was a tough first half of the season for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first few games I remember I was like, who did we sign? This dude seems so lost on the field. And by the end of the season, he was a deserved defensive
Yeah.
player of the year. I'm gonna go ahead and give him a 7.0. I know that the fans said 6.9. I think that's a fair score. Just given the fact that I think he really stepped up in a situation where the team needed him to step up and he stayed healthy. I am 100% convinced that he probably had some boo-boos here and there, but he continued playing through them just because he understood the lack of midfielders that this team had in the depth chart. So for that, I give him almost like a Braveheart award if you want, because he pushed through the 40 games and he did a decent job. I mean, could he have been better? Were there games where he absolutely got ripped to pieces? Yes, but one midfielder hasn't gone through that. So um, I'm excited to see him next year. Hopefully, he has more pieces around him to either get the best out of him, or maybe if he's having an off day, like give him that day off so that he can just like maybe take a few steps back and kind of look at his game again. But I don't want Victor Rotori to be playing 40 games next season as well, at least as a starter. I think he needs to be more of a rotational player. And I think we've spoken about it in this show, Elias. I think that's one of the main positions that needs to be addressed this offseason if this team wants to take this rebuild seriously, which includes
Here's the thing, though. I don't think the Victor Laturi position needs to be addressed. I think the player next to him does.
yeah.
Right? You can't have a rotation of Matty Longstaff, Samuel Piet, Fabian Herbers, and Brendan Craig.
Mm.
Like whoever's available, whoever's not injured right now gets to play next to him. No, I don't have a problem with Victor Laturi playing 40 games next year because he showed that he could do it at a reasonable MLS level. The thing is, you need someone next to him that can take advantage of the fact that Victor Laturi will run 11 or 12 kilometers a game. And somebody like, again, this has been floated out for a while. I floated this out. I've been propping this up for a while because I think it's the perfect fit. It's Stephen Eustachio. And Couscous Piri talked about it. And I felt like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. Somebody else is talking about it because he is perfect. He's exactly what you need. He steps into this league and he's immediately a top 5 midfielder in MLS. Immediately. I don't care what anybody says. And on top of that, you have someone that can control the tempo. You have someone that can distribute from anywhere on the pitch. He fits every single thing you need. He's not out of favor at Porto, but he's not exactly their golden child. Right? He had a good first season with them. This last season has been a bit rougher in terms of his minutes. And I think that you could get him for a reasonable price and instantly have a leader on the field, have a winner, and have, again, a member of the Canadian national team, which is also a very important thing to have because there's nobody on the team right now. I don't care how many people came through. Robbie, I'm not crazy. There's no, I'm not asking for Jude Bellingham, right? I'm not asking for something crazy here. Stephen Eustachio, if we are serious about holding this club to a standard,
yes,
where they want to be competitive, Stephen Eustachio cannot be a crazy shout. He cannot be, right? Whether or not you disagree or you agree with me on if he's the right guy, someone of his caliber and someone of his price range, you cannot afford to be like, that's too expensive. No, because then we'll be right back where we started. You have to at least admit that is the kind of prestige you want to bring in.
I think midfielders is a small section that we don't have much to talk about today, but it's a problem, Elias, that we actually don't have too many people to talk about in midfield because we should have had a lot more players to talk about in the midfield.
Absolutely.
But this goes to show how the kind of season 2025 was, where you are speaking about players. Well, we'll get right to the next players, but it's worrisome. And you're absolutely right. We can play the what if games all day and all night, but what if Victor Laturi would have had that excellent piece next to him? What kind of season does he have? And what if he does not a starter? What if he's a power, a super sub? We don't know. But for what he gave us for 40 games, given the circumstances, given the crappy roster that this team had assembled during the offseason, he put out a decent season, contributing when the team needed him the most. Next up, we have Samuel Piet. He finished the season on the injury list after an injury-riddled season, having played in 30 games. Now, something to note here, because I just mentioned that Victor Laturi played 40 games and Samuel Piet played 30. Now, that doesn't seem like it's just 10 games, Andy. What's the big difference? Why is to this season considered injury-riddled? I want to say out of those 30 games that he played this season, Elias, maybe 20 of them he was 100%, or maybe even less than that. The rest of the time he was dealing with the vertigo and whatever sickness he was dealing with, which was since the Houston game over the summer. The fans give him a 6.1 out of 10. Now that to me is a little bit surprising because Samuel Piet has been the, how would you call it? I guess the fan favorite, right? All these seasons, just because of all the effort he's put in, similar to what we're talking about Victor Laturi, right? Game in and game out, just giving their everything. But maybe this season, did he fall a little bit out of favor? You think this season?
I don't think he fell out of favor. I think it's just the reality of he's not physically able to string these games together, right? We saw it when he came back with the 2 games he came back. 2 games he started, he played an hour, 2-0 losses. Right towards the end of the season against St. Louis and against Red Bulls. It's not a quality thing. It's not an out of favor thing. Is he physically able to do this job in a starting capacity? I don't think so. Not right now. Again, we don't know the extent to how long this was bothering him. We know when it started, but we don't know, you know, the highs, you know, how much it affects you depending on the game. And that's the thing about vertigo. It's completely unique to each person, right? And so we weren't there on the sideline going, Sam, how did it feel today versus yesterday? How does it feel tomorrow? Like we don't know that, right? So it's tough to gauge what a 100% fit Samuel Piet will look like next season. But if I'm being completely honest with you, I have concerns. I have concerns because it's and they're not vertigo related. Because even at the beginning of the season, he looked good, but he had lost a bit of a step,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so now you come back to it, and he's played like 10 games fully fit in the last 5 months. Then he gets off-season surgery. So even if he's physically fit by his standards, by the doctor's standards for next season, arriving at training camp 100%, what is that 100%? I still think that he is his experience, his leadership, and his ability to play that position are vital. But in a starting capacity, I don't think so. I didn't give a rating. I'm giving it a 5.5, 5.5.
Whoa.
But I don't think that right now. And again, we still have 3 months before training. We still have what 2 months before training camp even starts. 3 months before the season starts. So 101 things can change. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't know shit about shit. But we right now, I don't think he features in a starting capacity. If you want to be a competitive MLS team,
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense that it's kind of been a storied season for Samuel Piet in a way because, as you mentioned, there was the first few games of the season where they were losing under Laurent Courtois. That you almost felt like Samuel Piet, instead of being that impact player that could help the team, maybe control the rhythm a little bit and maybe change the pace of the game. Instead, he was kind of trying to catch up to what was going on around him. Also, Laurent Courtois' scheme didn't necessarily help his position because he really wasn't playing his natural position either. And then he got injured, and then it was, I don't know if we're talking about maybe 10 years ago, this would have happened to him. It would have been a whole different story. He would have recovered quickly, while now in this later age, he's having a little harder of a time. We don't know that. Again, we can play the what ifs game at all, you know, for hours and hours. But um, I want to give Samuel Piet a 6.5, and I'll tell you why. Just because, as I mentioned, out of those 30 games that I mentioned, 20 of those he was playing like half a Samuel Piet, not maybe not even half, just barely. But he understood the situation. He understood what was going on, and how at that point they didn't need a full Samuel Piet. They just needed a body or somebody that does the bare minimum for a defensive midfielder. And he put himself out there at the risk of maybe making his sickness even worse than it was. Because the way he said it in press conferences, the way that Lucas Saputo or Gabriel Javet has talked about it, they talked about it as if like, you know, we're not sure, like we're still waiting. Where it's very this vertical thing is very confusing to everybody. So that's why I want to give him those extra points, not necessarily by performance on the field, but by understanding the situation of the season of his team and putting, a risk in it, in himself and his health for the team. So I guess if you want a bravery award to Samuel Piet, he deserves that. But beyond that,
yeah,
I
but
mean,
he's always been that. Like I never had any doubt that he would have toughed through it because again, it's just the kind of guy he is, right?
mhm.
Um,
But those
yeah,
points
I
count
just
when
yeah,
you evaluate
I
it.
think 5.5 may be a bit harsh. I'm gonna stick with my ratings. So I'm not gonna start changing my ratings. Because again, 5.56, we're nickel and diming here, but
Fine, six.
definitely need a lot more information, a lot more assurances before I can confidently say like, oh yeah, he should be a starter again next year.
As for 2026, I don't want to see Samuel Piet start. I think again we talked about it when we're talking about Victor Latour. If this team, Elias, you said it, and I'm gonna go ahead and echo what you're saying. If this team wants to set a standard for this roster and what play they want to see on the field, you can't have Samuel Piet starting if he's a step behind, fully healthy. Like it has to be players.
That's the thing, right? We need to understand what his output is next season, what it's going to be, right? I don't think it's going to be the same output as Victor Latour, but there were moments where you could tell Victor Latour needed a bit of experience, needed a bit of that maturity that Samuel Piet brings. So right now, yeah, of course, I think Victor Latour is ahead of Samuel Piet, but that doesn't mean that that's going to stay the same.
Yeah. and I have Robbie that agrees with me. We'll see how everything the rest of the night goes, Robbie. I hope
Ah, you
we
guys are
agree
crazy.
with we
You guys don't know
agree.
what you're talking about.
But let's wait and see for 2026. I'm starting to sound like Hattie, huh? Let's
Oh
wait
my
and see.
god.
Let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. So let's go ahead and move on to the next player, followed by Matty Longstaff, who joined the team late in the season with a trade that saw Jewel and Anthony Vilsain go to Toronto FC. And Montreal receive Longstaff in a position dire that needed help desperately. He got his option exercised for 2026. Elias, he played 8 games for Montreal and contributed 1 assist. What are your thoughts? And first of all, Matty Longstaff by the fans got a rating of 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's completely deserved. I'd probably give him a 6 too. He was present, right? He did his job. He has, some MLS experience. He's not a revelation. He's not a superstar, but he seems like one of those good squad players that puts in the work and that's going to provide minutes off the bench that I really like. Because again, he brings the same kind of work rate that you see out of people like Victor Latour or Samuel Piet, and he has a bit more technical capability. So I think, you know, at least from what I see right now, it's probably going to be him against Samuel Piet competing to back up Victor Loturi based on what we saw this season, especially how they ended this season. But I didn't hate what I saw from him. People were like, "Oh, this guy shouldn't even be in ML." Like, no, people relax. And honestly, his combination with Prince was really nice. Like that was instantly, obvious. And yeah, I'd like to see him try and get a bit further forward. He's versatile enough, maybe even help out in the 10 if he has to. But I think he's one of those good Swiss Army knives to have in your back pocket, kind of like a Brendan Craig. It's not a bad thing to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, I think Matty Longstaff, if he's coming back in 2026, he's going to. Did you say your rating? Because
I just gave him a 6. I think
okay,
that's down the middle. It's like not down the middle,
okay.
be in the middle.
Look, I think when Matty Longstaff first joined the team, again at that point, I don't know how anybody else reacted, but I reacted in the sense of like finally some help in that part of the field because it was. I mean, think about it. Before Matty Longstaff joined the team, I think we had, as we mentioned, the half of Samuel Piet playing. We had Victor Loturi just playing every other minute. I mean, it was crazy in the midfield. And Matty Longstaff came in. I think I was hoping to see more of an impact player. I don't think he was that much of an impact player in the midfield. I think he, as you mentioned, he did his job. He did it well. But sometimes you can see from certain players, Elias, when you watch him on the field, you can say like this guy has potential. He has potential to be something great. He has potential to do more. I don't feel like that about Matty Longstaff. I feel like we've seen what he does best at his best with CF Montreal. And when I say that, I don't mean that like it's not okay. I think it's fine to be that, but we have to set our expectations. Be realistic about the expectations about Matty Longstaff, and I think he is that kind of player that will be a backup, a fantastic backup, and be able to alleviate some of the pressure on some of the starters. Again, trying to set the standard as to what is coming off the bench and what is starting. Right. I mean, there were parts of his game that I didn't necessarily like. That I don't know if that's something that's going to develop over time, but it's definitely something that's it's going to be a profile that's going to be interesting to see how it's going to be handled in 2026. So we'll see. I want to give him a 5.5 just because again he did his job just well, and he didn't really do anything per se bad. He was in the storyline of any game that I can remember. So no, I give him a 5.5, and that's not a bad way. I'm not saying because he did a bad season. We had such a small sample of him too. All right, so just to finish up the midfield, we have veteran Fabien Herbers, who also spent a majority of the season on the injury list, playing only 16 games all year while contributing 1 goal. The fans gave him 5.3. Oof, I find that harsh.
That is
Um,
harsh. I can't blame them that much because again, he spent 2/3 of the season hurt. But I mean, he was good, man. He played well. I don't know. I feel like he brought something different from what Caden Clark and then later on Ivan Jaime brought to that left side. But I didn't hate it. Again, I'd like to see him play a bit more than just 16 games next season. At least, if you play 16 games, it's because for sporting reasons and not for injury reasons. Because I feel like every single time he started to gain momentum and start to finally do some stuff right and start to, really help this attack, you get hurt again. And that's where you have to go like, okay, this medical staff, why are there so many players with so many relapses? Talking about not just him, but again, Rioni didn't have relapses necessarily because it was different stuff. Jalen Neal had some stuff, some relapses, some different stuff. It's weird. Hennedy Sinchuk was struggling with fitness and form all season. You have all these guys, right? And this is not a new thing. This is a trademark in Montreal, right? Where you have people that injuries happen to every team all the time, but the amount of relapses and the amount of injury riddled seasons that we get for vital players is borderline unacceptable. Not borderline, it's unacceptable, right? So if you're going to rebuild everything and then all your important players get hurt, then it doesn't really, whatever. Even Jaime got hurt. He's been here for 5 minutes. He got hurt too, right? Turned out to be nothing, but he's been here 5 minutes and he's hurt. This is starting to become almost like a running joke. So I feel like, yeah, I think he deserves more of a 6.5. But I understand, in terms of your overall contribution to the season, unfortunately, it has not been that much because you kept on getting hurt, right? Not necessarily his own fault, but it's just the reality of the situation. It's the reality of the sport.
Right. Look, Fabian Herbers, I would like to give him maybe a 6.0 just based on how he performed when he was on the field. Because from what I can remember, every time he was on the field, he wasn't half of Fabian Herbers. He was impactful. I didn't like his first few games with CF Montreal, but again, he was playing under the Laurent Courtois scheme. And then once the Donadel scheme changed, he all of a sudden picked up another gear and he got injured. But I really liked what I saw from him. I thought he showed over and over again his experience as a seasoned veteran for the MLS. He brought a lot of calm. He brought a lot of maturity to the front. But at the same time, it wasn't present every day. So every game. So it's he is someone that I'm not entirely sure if I want to see him in 2026, especially again. I'll say this 30,000 times, maybe this pod and the next few pods. But if CF Montreal wants to set the standard for the team for 2026 for the roster, then they are players like Fabien Herbers. I don't know if they're necessarily the kind of players you want to have starting or the kind of players you want to have in your bench because they're in their later years of their career. And if Elias, I know you talked about the injury history in Montreal and all that, and how it could be it impacts a lot of players. You're absolutely right. I agree with you. But at the same time, are the players being correctly guided as to how to prepare with the Montreal weather, with the Montreal conditions, with the trips from Montreal
He played
to
in
the rest of
Chicago for like 5 years. Like it's
was out
not
there before?
as cold, but he played Chicago too. He
Yeah.
came from Chicago, right? Like it's not Philly, same thing, right? It's not as cold as Montreal. Obviously, they got snow, they got cold stuff. Like it's not like you've been playing. You're German, right? So like weather is not a problem here, right?
Yeah.
If it's something else, maybe. But at least from a weather perspective, that should be the last thing that this guy's concerned about.
Guys, I'm gonna clip that from Elias. You're German.
You're German.
You're German. I'm just gonna clip that every time we talk about Fabian Herbers and Prince Owusu. You're German. All right. So speaking of Prince Owusu, we're gonna move on to the attackers. Let's start with our favorite character. Who's our favorite character? Elias already pulled it up. Bryce Duke, baby. He's not coming back. Spent a lot of time on the injury list in 2025 and wasn't able to establish himself upon his return this season. Holy smokes, 3.8 by the fans. He played 21 games and contributed 1 assist. What are your thoughts? And now let's not just talk about this season, Elias, because I know we're doing it at postmortem because he's not coming back and he's been here since 2023. What are your thoughts on Bryce Duke? And how does this ending, this 2025, sum up his time with Montreal?
I wanted Bryce Duke to work so bad. I think that he had everything in his tool chest that you needed to be a successful midfielder in this league. I think he had, Robbie is feeling generous, 4.5. Yeah. But he had everything in his tool chest to succeed. He had the technical quality. He had the right idea to fit in a system that would encourage him to kind of control the tempo of the game. And then they kept on pushing him further and further up the field. And every single time they pushed him further up the field, it was a nightmare. And every single time he took a step back and he played deeper in the midfield, he looked like a completely different guy. He got more touches, he got more influence on the game, he got more space, he got more everything. And all of a sudden he played a bit better. And then they go, oh, you're playing better again. Thank God. Let's put you back further up the field. And then it would be a disaster again. So I feel like it's unfortunate because he never got a proper, he never was able to really establish himself in the team. But again, he stayed fit for the majority of the time here. And after a certain point, you can't just blame tactics, right? I think that Bryce Duke had an immense amount of talent. I think that at least for a very short time, he was the only midfielder technically on par with Victor Wanyama when they were playing together. And unfortunately, he just never was put in a position where he could shine. And I think that affected him. I think that kind of got him bogged down in too much, in doing too much, and then being able to not deliver enough. And then every single time we saw him on the field, he just did not look comfortable. He didn't look confident. And again, a Bryce Duke when he's feeling himself, terrifying thing to see. But how many times was he really feeling himself in the last 2.5 years? Not nearly enough. And unfortunately, for this season, I'm not gonna. Again, I with the other guys, I didn't really think too hard about the ratings for the guys that left. A 4 is
So nice.
I guess kind of accurate. I'm sad that it's one of those don't cry because it's done, smile because it happened. But I'm still a part of the Bryce Duke fan club. I'm still a Bryce Duke defender because I love that profile of midfielder, and I hope that they go and get another one that maybe has a chance to shine and maybe has a chance to play a bit deeper and control the game the way he should.
Look, it's pretty much going to be copy paste whatever you say about Bryce Duke, but I do want to say this. From the time I saw him play in 2023, the best version of Bryce Duke that I saw play was the Bryce Duke that wasn't thinking. The one that, and what I mean by that is the one that would quickly react to balls coming his way, and he would just quickly react to a pass, quickly see the pass, quickly see the lane, and just not judge him, question himself. Just continue with the flow of the game. Just don't overthink it. And I feel like as the years went on, as the coaches changed, as the scheme changed, it's almost like Bryce Duke in his own mind started overthinking everything, overthinking all his passes, all his moves, and it made it that he looked like he was a step behind every, every player, every opponent, and it made him look silly with some of the turnovers he had. I don't think he fully grasped the responsibility of playing defense when he was up there, which I think Laurent Courtois and Marco Donadel demanded of his attackers. And I think Marco Donadel was a little more harsher in the sense that if you don't play defense, you're out. It's just straightforward. So which I think was the same downfall for Jules Anthony Vilsain. But yeah, I just think that it was one of those things. Now, last time I dropped the scoop, right, Elias, about Jonathan Sirois. This week I wanted to drop another scoop that I knew a long time ago, but I never mentioned it. Because I just mentioned a little earlier how there was the midfields, that there was a lack of that and all that. You wish, from what I heard, Elias, is that the midfielder Noel Buck. Does that tell you anything? He's the one that went to San Jose. He was like a midseason trade from New England, and he was actually offered to CF Montreal as a player. He was offered. I don't know the amounts. I don't know
how else was it going to be offered.
I don't know the amounts or anything, but he was pretty much being shopped around before he went to San Jose, and CF Montreal was one of those that they held talks and it never worked out. But this could have been, when I look at him now, because he got injured. He got injured. He's 20 years old. He got injured. He was off the list for a long time. He only came back at the end of the season, and he contributed with 1 assist towards the end of the season. Now, again, I'm not saying that it would have been perfect for CF Montreal, but we needed bodies in midfield, right? And vision is 2020 when you look back, right? But this is another profile that CF Montreal said no to. a young midfielder that has a big potential. Noel Buck is a big, and he's, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think he does have some. He has played a few times for the U.S. youth teams. So could be an interesting profile. We'll see how he develops in the MLS in the next few years. But yeah. So I just wanted to drop that. It's something that I had heard. So moving on from Bryce Duke, we're gonna go on to our next guy. Next up, we got Dante Sealy, who flourished as a winger in Marco Donadel's new scheme. He played 36 games, had 9 goals and 2 assists, and got hot towards the tail end of the season. The fans graded him 7.1 out of 10. What did you think of Dante Sealy?
A 7 is fair. A seven is fair. I think that again, the way he ended the year, he made a fantastic case for himself to be a starter next season. Right? And we were talking about it. The only thing missing from Dante Sealy's game is consistency. That's a huge only, by the way. But the best of Dante Sealy and the worst of Dante Sealy was an enormous gulf.
Mm.
It was a gulf. It was, anywhere from a 10 to a 1, right? The Dante Sealy
In
gap.
the same game, sometimes in the same half.
Sometimes in the
Yeah.
same game, sometimes in the same 5 minutes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that was the biggest problem, was that when you have a starter, you need to know that I'm going to get at least a certain amount of regular output. And again, you can't really say that for almost any of the CF Montreal players this season. So it's not fair to single him out. It just felt like the swings in consistency were the most bipolar from him.
Mhm.
But again, you look at the way he ended the season, and it's almost like he took that personally, because every single game, and even games where he wasn't scoring or assisting, he was dangerous. He was attacking people. He was, one-on-one, he was a nightmare to play against. His contact with the ball, the way his delivery, everything seemed to be boosted up another level. So I was very happy with the way he ended the season. I think that Marco Donadel's, we're going to talk about Henai Sinchuk, right? But their competition on the right-hand side, it all depends on whether or not Marco Donadel wants Henai Sinchuk in the middle of the park. But Dante Sealy made a fantastic case for himself to be the starter. And I still think that, at least for next season, it's open, because Henai Sinchuk is going to be 19 years old, and he's by no means a finished, polished thing. I mean, Dante Sealy is going to be 22. He's not 28 or 29 now. He's still very young as well. He said it a couple of times this season. It's his first full season of professional soccer, right? That's also an important thing to remember. But he's shown what his ceiling is, and he's shown what his ceiling could be. I still have concerns about the consistency, right? And if he gets like a 7 or 8 game run next year, or a couple of those runs like he did at the end of last season, then it's an entirely different story. But we still need proof of concept, because you said, right, he played 36 games and he was consistent for 20% of that.
Yeah.
Everything else was, what kind of Dante are we getting today?
Yeah.
And you could never guess.
At some point, you start also seeing his name in the starting lineup, and you're like, "Here we go again," right? Like you just what you're gonna
A
get out
couple
of
of
him.
those, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's more just a here we go of what Dante Sealy are we getting today?
Yeah.
And
I mean, look, I think what happened at the end of the season, and I agree with you. I think 7.1 that the fans gave him is a little high in my opinion. I think even though he did get hot off the season, I think it's easy for people to remember, what is it called, a recency memory, where people
I
can just
mean, look
remember.
how we treated Caden Clark.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. And it's just like people remember what he did, but as you mentioned, you can't forget what he did at the beginning of the season, and that was something that it made you pull your hair, because he could have some terrible performances, but towards the end, beyond him obviously picking up his game, there were also pieces that fit perfectly for him. They got a left winger. They got Henadi Centric back. Somebody, they David Bugay picked up his game behind them. So there were a lot of pieces that were working that made it that he could do his job in a more, with a lot more. Um, why am I running out of words? He had a lot. Yeah, less of a hard time doing his job. Jesus, what's going on with me? And so you could see that that's contributed to his assist and to the uptick in his goals, and that's something that you can't guarantee that it's going to happen throughout the full season for everyone, for every game. it won't be always that you'll have a left winger or a striker that's going to be having a game that is going to make camouflage Dante Sealy's mistakes. So I think that for 2026, Dante Sealy needs to be in the bench, and not as a punishment, just because if we're setting the standard for CF Montreal, I don't think Dante Sealy at this point should be considered a starting winger for Marco Donadel. But if 2026 comes around and he's still the starting winger, either Marco Donadel sees something that we don't, Marco Donadel and his staff see something that we don't, and thinks it's worth putting him there as a starter. But I think he needs to grow his game in a lot of phases, and as you mentioned, just be consistent. I promise, Elias, it's gonna get better. I don't know what's going on with my words today, but I'm a mess. Anyways, next one. CF Montreal's 2025 MVP, Prince Owusu, who played 40 games and had 17 goals and 3 assists. Elias, if you can pull up the fan grades for me so I can. They gave Prince Owusu 8.2 out of 10. He was the highest rated, right, Elias, of all the players?
Yeah.
Yeah. Woo, Prince Owusu is a subject, and I think we could do a whole podcast on Prince Owusu's season, right? But we'll keep it short. What'd you think of his season?
I had my problems with Prince Owusu. Obviously, everyone did with that start to the season where you score like 1 goal in 11 games. I think that's and some very fair criticism, because you could tell that the confidence wasn't there, the execution wasn't there, everything. He was in his own head, and he's Chinonzo for again. Like no, right? And we kind of instantly saw that. No, he's obviously much better at soccer than Chinonzo for. He's just not, he's just struggling with a little bit of confidence. And the second he got that goal against and at NYCFC in Yankee Stadium, all of a sudden he looked like a brand new man. And I think the biggest thing is with Giacomo Vrioni arriving at training camp injured, everyone said, so this is the guy that's replacing Joseph Martinez. So this is the guy replacing the MVP. This is the guy they're replacing, the guy that led you to the playoffs, the guy that led you to being the best team in MLS in the last 10 games of the season. That's the guy, right? And I don't think that Prince Owusu was ready for it. Not necessarily, mentally. I don't think he expected to be thrust upon him right away, because I'd say around late spring, early summer, he finally settled into the team. And he understood what Marco Donadel needed out of him. Not just in a I need you to score goals capacity, but in a I need you to make everyone around you better. And this was the biggest thing, right? Because in terms of output, he has the same amount, more or less, of offensive output that Joseph Martinez had in his first season, his only season with Montreal. And that's because, that's not the only thing that Joseph Martinez was that's not the only reason he was so important, because he made everyone else around him better. He made Caden Clark and Bryce Duke look like Messi and Neymar. All the three of them were so well linked and were so efficient and on the same page that they were the hottest front three in soccer for like a month and a half, which is crazy to think about. And so Prince Owusu quickly understood that he has to make everyone around him better. And by the end of the season, that's exactly what he was doing. Even if he only has 3 assists, if you look at key passes, if you look at his hold-up play, you look at the way he lifts up the people around him versus his body language and his way of operating in the beginning of the season, where if you did not instantly give him the ball the second he asked for it, the hands are up and the complaining and the head is down and the slump and shoulder, that all went away. And he still asked for the ball because that's what strikers do, but it was more of, I am expecting more of you now, and not, you didn't give me the ball, so you're shit, right? And I think that is, again, he also had the captain's armband for like 15 games this year, right? Or like, I don't know exactly how many games, but for a lot of the season, especially in the back half with no Piet and no Waterman, and no Sirois, he had the captain's armband, and he wore it well. He did not look a millimeter out of place. I'm giving him an 8.5, by the way. I don't. But I think all of this to say that Prince Owusu is probably one of, if not the biggest reason Marco Donadel has a job this year. Because Marco Donadel got to him and he said, "You're my leader." And Prince Wusu said, "Yes, boss." And then they did that meme where the brains are interchanging information. That was it. And so I think he is the biggest reason that Prince Owusu, that Marco Donadel has made permanent, was because he got through Prince Owusu, and Prince Owusu turned into a goal scoring machine.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of reflected a calm Marco Donadel on the field, not getting as many yellow
Those
cards,
are
but still,
oxymorons, but yeah.
yeah. But like it's just that he stayed. I think he, as you mentioned, the word is he started feeling a lot more comfortable, not just on the field but outside of the field as well with the media. Also, as Elias, you and I have been to practice before at CF Montreal practices, and you would always see like the kids, the youth camps that were waiting for autographs. I mean, you could hear them. They were like, "Prince, Prince, Prince!" Like you could see that they were. He was kind of gathering a following with the youngsters, right? And yeah, I would give him an 8, and the only reason why I wouldn't even give him a 9 or a 10 is because beyond, you mentioned that there was that poor part at the beginning of the season where he even got booed at Statsaputo. But even after, like, the end of the season where he seemed to not be able to score anything and everything, there were still moments, Elias, and I don't know if people caught on to that, but there were moments where I felt that Prince Owusu kind of got down on himself. There was that particular game against Toronto, where he played at Toronto. I forgot. I think it was towards the end of the season that I just felt like he was a non-factor. Like he really was. Like it's like we went back to day one with Prince Owosu, where he was again, like you mentioned, slumping, kind of complaining and all that, not really being the Prince we had grown to see and love throughout the season. He just there were like a few games, but then he kind of got back to his game, and he obviously missed the penalty at the end of the season, the last game, which could have honestly been game changing in the sense of momentum. When we speak about momentum, not totally his fault, but definitely the best player CF Montreal had in 2025. That's my opinion. Um, a tremendous steal by CF Montreal in the offseason. I don't know if it was Corey Ray. I don't know if this was a Corey Ray signing because he dealt with his agent while he was in Toronto, or if this was the Lucas Aputo, Gabriel Gervais tandem. But yeah. Um, what else was gonna say? So that's
What's your
Prince.
rating?
So sorry.
What's your rating? You didn't give us a rating.
Yeah, I said a 8.0.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so next up we have at right wing we had the young winger from Ukraine, Hennady Sinchuk, who also spent some lengthy time in the injury list, but was impactful when he was on the field. He played 19 games and contributed 1 goal and 1 assist. Now I think that, and the fans gave him a 6.7 out of 10, which is surprising. But to me, it's kind of telling when you're talking about 19 games and only 1 goal and 1 assist. Elias, I felt like Hennady Sinchuk, I would give him a higher rating. I maybe give him a 7.5, not based on the stats of 1 goal and 1 assist, but the once he returned from injury, not before the injury, once he returned from injury, I felt like he brought a different face to the field, a different, like, again, alleviating that kind of pressure from Dante Seeley from his side. He was a threat, something that CF Montreal hadn't seen all season. He was a threat to defenders. Defenders didn't know what to expect of him. He always had defenders turning around, or he would always cut in and try to that brave shot from outside the box. But this is something that we hadn't seen from CF Montreal players. There was a lot of, I don't know if you remember this back in 2023, 2022, those years, sorry, even 2024, there were moments where Laurent Courtois or Hernan Lasada at the time would say, I'm trying to get my players to be less timid in front of the goal. They keep passing the ball instead of shooting. And that's the kind of thing you get from Hennady Sinchuk, someone that has that killer instinct that just wants to shoot the ball and score from anywhere. And that's, again, he only had 1 goal at the end of the day. But I still think that he was very impactful for how he made other players, including David Bugai and even Prince Owosu, better just being on the field. What was your take on that?
I don't know, because again, I don't see his season the same way that you do. I think that we gave Dante Seeley all this flack for inconsistency. You look at a lot of these games, and I think that we get blinded by the moments and the moments of brilliance that he had, because he had some of those moments. where he beats one or two players, a beautiful ball or create a chance. The goal he scored where he linked up with O'Hare Escobar, fantastic. A lot of games and long stretches of games, he fades into the background, right? He doesn't impact a whole lot. And another problem that I kind of have is that when Marco Donadel played him in the 10, played him in the middle of the park, he naturally gravitated towards the right side of the field and ended up just becoming a second right winger and actually just kind of pushed Dante Sealy out of the way, right? And say what you will, again, this is experience, this is maturity, this is tactical acumen, this is stuff that an 18-year-old has to learn at the end of the day. This is stuff that you don't just, I got it. Some people do, but some people don't. And I think this is the big thing he has to learn is to operate more comfortably in his system, because I found him to be inconsistent a lot of the time. And yeah, you can say, language barrier, injury, youth, and experience, all these things play into it. But if we're judging someone who's in the U22 spot, who is expected to be an important player in this season, you can say, fine, your first season had some hiccups. Okay, I expect you to grow, right? Marco Donadel is big on treating everyone like grown-ass adults. If you're on this team, you're a professional soccer player, I'm treating you like an adult. Okay, I have expectations of you now. I don't want to see lateral moves next season. I don't want to see the exact same Hinadi Sinchuk. I want to see Hinadi Sinchuk having added some physical fitness, right? Because he's a big kid and he's not easily muscled off the ball. But I want to see in terms of actual cardio, because again, I want to see him being able. I don't know how many full 90s he's played. I don't think he's played any full
He
90s.
played one,
I think he
I
played
think.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to see a Hinadi Sinchuk that can play for 90 minutes and do what he does, because if he ups that physical fitness portion of it, he's going to become even more effective. But this is the stuff you have to do at 18 years old, right? You can't be like, oh, he was good for an 18-year-old. It's fine. I'm not going to have any expectations. No, you have to now put your foot down and say, good job. What are you going to do now? And so, yeah, I'm going to give him a 6.5. I think that he had good moments. I think he had too many moments where he was too timid, where he wouldn't take somebody on, or he was, out of position, and it became a bit of a hindrance to everyone else around him.
Okay. I do think that he's also young, and I do feel like some of the pieces around him were, especially when they took David Bugay and Bori Hidalgo, they kind of paired him up with someone. And I'm not using that as an excuse, Elias, okay? Because just because you take out David Bugay doesn't excuse Hennady Sinchuk's performances. He has to adapt to whoever he plays with, but he's still young. I think he's still young, and I think that you're absolutely right. And then 2026 has to be the year where he adds that, not only, like as you mentioned, the physical aspect of his game, but also another, maybe a surprising element, maybe something. Not everything was positive with him. There were some moments where you really question what the hell he was thinking by some of the crosses that he
And he
didn't
needs to work
successfully
on his
do.
right foot too.
Yeah, and it's a massive phase of his game that he needs to improve on. With the World Cup right around the corner, I'm sure he wants to show the world what he's capable of doing. Okay, so next up we have Montreal's designated player, Giacomo Vrioni, who came on a bargain from New England with high expectations, yet failed to reach his full potential due to different factors. I say factors because there was injuries, there were suspensions, there were other things. He played 10 games in 2025 and scored 4 goals. Now think about that. Those are 10 games and 4 goals. That ratio right there is really not too bad. 10
It's
games, four
fantastic.
goals.
That's very solid.
But what league in this world only plays 10 games, right? Unless you're playing the League's Cup or something.
The League's Cup, exactly.
Yeah. But beyond that, we're talking about Samuel Piet, we're talking about Victor Lotori, which were signed at the same time, and they all played 40 games, right? So the whole Giacomo Brioni, to me, that whole situation, I'm kind of happy that chapter's over, not just because of like what happened on the field. I think he could have been great, but it's mostly with Giacomo Brioni, it's what happened outside the field. I found that sometimes he was too, how would I say this? Maybe a little too confrontational with the media, not as pleasant. And I'm sure, Elias, you had your chances to meet him as well. Yeah, it wasn't always the nicest thing. I know the fans gave him a 4.5 out of 10. I would give him even less, maybe a 3, because I felt like a lot of times, even some of his practice behaviors that you observed, he at times seemed like he didn't really care for it, cared more about the other things in practice. So I'm really, to me, Giacomo Brioni to this day will be one of the biggest DP flops in Montreal, in the Montreal Impact's history, in CF Montreal. So I liked what he did when he was on the field, but it wasn't enough. What do
He
you
was
think?
on the field.
Yeah, at least that's what FIFA says. But but yeah, what would you think?
No, I look. Robbie says didn't play enough to rate him. Everyone that played over 300 minutes gets rated. That was just the rule we set. That's why some of the players just didn't get mentioned or won't get mentioned. Um, but honestly, like I loved this signing for like 5 minutes, and then I found out that he was coming to training camp injured. I was like, oh brother, here we go again, and
Here
that
we
was
go
it.
again.
That was it. He never got any rhythm. He started a game, he started 2 games, and then he's out for a month. And then he started 2 games in a row again. He's gonna start a third game. They got hurt during warm up. He got hurt again. And then he did this, they did that, and then he's back in form. He scores a brace, okay, blows out an arm ligament or whatever, and in training. I feel like I'm being punked now. What the hell is this?
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure that I'm sure that the coaching staff and the sporting direction also felt like there has to be a prank. There's no way you're injured again. And no, sadly, it is true. But again, yeah, I'm gonna rate him one. Like I'm gonna be consistent. This is the fourth player that's leaving in this postmortem, and I'm not gonna weigh too heavily on his rating. 4.5 is definitely generous because people dug him, I guess. But whatever. 3.5. I'll be the
I mean,
optimist.
look, the ratio. I
Bus.
understand because the ratio is not too bad. The few times that he was there, he actually did something. But like I mentioned, it's something that goes beyond that. It's outside the field. I think it's been mentioned before. I don't think this comes to a surprise to anybody. But in practice, Elias, there were a few times that he was actually Marco Donadel lost his shit on him. He lost his shit on Giacomo Brioni. And he said, you know what,
He
just
was at
go.
practice.
Just, he would say, just
Are you
go,
sure?
yeah. I saw it with my own
No,
eyes.
no, no, no. But you're right. You're right. There are several times where there was some frustration, and it's a shame because I feel like there were some really good moments where he was embracing this role of teaching, especially a lot of the youngsters. There was many times where I saw him take Hennady Sinchuk under his wing and give him some advice and talk to him, and I appreciated that, and I think that he Sinchuk definitely appreciated it too. And then as many moments as there were of that, there were even more where he's just he does the drill for 5 minutes and he's feeling his hamstring or he's feeling his ankle. And
Yeah.
then it's just like, oh shit, here we go again, And when you have it in your mind that something like this is happening and you can't really get free of the burden of an injury, you're going to keep on seeing hints of your injury everywhere. It's going to almost be like self-prophesizing and self-manifesting. So, I feel like we've already spent too much time talking about him. And I feel like by this time, in like 5 months when the season starts, 4 months when the season starts, we'll have already forgotten about him. So
Yeah, but we're still
I
doing the post-mortem. So there's some things that I would just want to put out there. He's gone from the team. I don't think he'll come back. At least
well,
as it stands today,
he's
he's
not
not
coming
coming
back.
back. Yeah,
I mean, they
but
announced it. He's not getting his option renewed, so he's
you
not
never
coming
know.
back for
Yeah,
sure.
you never know.
Never know. They're not signing him to a new contract unless it's
We'll
yeah.
wait. We'll wait and see.
If they sign him for 400,000, I'll take him.
All right. But no, all I'm saying is there's some things that need to be said about his behavior outside the field. I mean, if your coach is losing their mind on you and sending you to the locker because they feel that you're just playing games in the practice field, then it's a problem. Okay, so next we have the youngster that joined during the summer transfer window, who came with a lot of hype as well due to his performances in the Gold Cup. Oger Escobar joined mid-season from the New England Revolution and played 20 games, scoring 2 goals and 1 assist. The fans give him a 6.7 out of 10. I would go maybe a 6.5. To me, the biggest question with Oger Escobar is why didn't he ever get the 90 minutes? I mean, was it a fitness issue? Like, was it? I know he started a few times, but they never actually let him finish the 90 minutes. And that's where it's a little bit concerning with me, because even with with the national team, he would get switched off frequently, and you could see that at certain points of his game, he would like kind of get tired and stop performing so well. Um, but when he's there, when he's on the field, the few minutes he plays, Elias, he's impactful. He's actually dynamic. He is playing defense. What we just said, Bryce Duke didn't learn how to do in his 3 years. He was doing it. He was sneaking up to defenders and midfielders and getting the ball back. He's dynamic, but it doesn't last all game. It kind of goes away. Is this an age thing? Like, is this an experience? Is this what did you think of Ojo Escobar's season with the CF Montreal?
My only problem with Jorge Escobar on the field is that he was not getting the ball enough. He instantly came in, and I don't know what he did to piss off Marco Donadell, but he didn't get nearly enough starts. He didn't get nearly enough minutes. I think personally, I think he could have done and should have done a whole lot more this season, and proved it every single time. He's one of the most creative and, you know, I don't know, débrouillard is the word, right? He's one of the best problem solvers on the team when it comes to tight spaces, when it comes to tricky defenses, when it comes to awkward matchups. He almost always found some kind of solution. And I think that he's going to play very well with Ivan Jaime. I liked what I saw with him and, both Dante Sealy and Hennady Sinchuk when they were on the right. And he combined well with Prince. He combined well with everybody. He's one of these 10s that may not necessarily be decisive yet. He got, he contributed a little bit. He contributed a whole lot at the Gold Cup, but he did it from the right-hand side of the attack because they were playing it flat. It was like a 4-3-3 and it was flat or whatever. But he's one of these players that gets along well with everyone. The only problem is they did not play him enough and they didn't put the ball on his feet enough. I'm going to give him a 7. I think he was excellent. I love watching him play. He got me out of my seat, metaphorically. I was in the press box and those seats are terrible. But he got me, figuratively out of my seat more than Sinchuk and almost as much as Dante Sealy, despite having played half the games. So I love what I saw from Jorge Escobar. And I think that if this team is serious about being competitive next season, you try and get him as many minutes as possible because he's going to be excellent. And Pat White saying, I like him, but they need an upgrade for now. The only way I would be okay with him being a backup is if they go out there and they get an Evander, Hani Mukhtar, Daniel Gazdag level number 10 that he can learn from. That is the only way. Because if they're going to go out there, they're going to get a decent to mid-level 10. And that guy is going to take minutes out of Jorge Escobar. I'm going to lose my mind. If you're making Jorge Escobar, who I still think, based on just this season alone, has the highest ceiling out of everyone, you're going to make him play backup. It better be for someone who can play at an MVP level, for someone who could bag you 30 goal contributions a season. That's the only way, in my mind, you can sell me on that. Because anyone less than that, and you're actively hamstringing a gem, a diamond.
Yeah, someone like Bryce Duke, but it's something that I'm sorry.
I didn't even process what you just said, and I was gonna
Bryce Duke needs to come in and rip it to pieces. But no, I agree with you. Jorge Escobar has a tremendous potential. Very exciting to see. My only question is again why it doesn't last. Now, this might have to do with him maybe not having a full off season with the first team. Maybe that's going to help. But it's going to be very, very exciting the next step he takes. Columbus is winning 4-0 against FC Cincinnati. You just mentioned Evander. They are absolutely ripping them to pieces. But so I think Ojer Escobar is going to be a big key piece. And he's not expensive. I was looking at the salaries that were released. He's getting paid the same price, I believe, as the academy kids, like 80K or something.
He's making league minimum.
So the CF Montreal can't mess this profile up. They really have to surround him with the right pieces, enable him to be his best version, and let's hope he stays healthy as well. Last but not least, we have the big name, Ivan Jaime, who joined mid-season from Porto on loan and had an instant impact on the field. He only played 6 games and had 1 assist, but his presence on the field clearly impacted the way opponents organize their defense. The fans voted him 6.9 out of 10. Elias, what'd you think of the 6 games we got to see from Ivan Jaime?
Sign him. Sign him right now. I don't care. Sign him right now. You need this level of talent. I'm not saying he's going to be Nacho Piatti and score 20 and add 15 assists or whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need this level of quality on the field. You need this level of every single time he touches the ball. Not only do the fans pay attention, but so does the defense. He's going to draw people onto the wings. And this is exactly what Marco Donadel wants, right? That's his system, is having talented wingers that are in isolated one-on-one situations or two-on-one with an overlapping fullback that will draw attention to create space in the middle. That's exactly what you get with Sinchuk and Sealy. That's exactly what you get when you have Ivan Jaime on the pitch. The only thing is you have to eliminate any doubt, right? You sign him or, his loan is until June. The second his loan is done, permanent, you buy. I don't care, right? If it's 5 or 5.5, or I don't care what kind of, legal gymnastics you have to do. It's the $500,000. I could not give a shit, right? This is a player that you get because, again, even if he's not your superstar, you need another designated player. I think we're both in agreement on that. You need someone of this caliber because he provides danger all the time. And you're worried about whether or not he's going to score. If he stays healthy, again, when you're in Montreal, that is always a consideration. But he's going to score. He's going to get assists. He's going to create. He already has created chances. He already has gotten assists, and he's going to do that tenfold when you give him a full off season. When you give him time to grow and get in tune with his teammates. When you pair him up with either Jorge Escobar or a top level 10, when you pair him up with a modern fullback that's going to hit him with the overlap, that's going to combine with him, that's going to add some creativity to that side, I think you need to go all in on the left side. I'm talking about add a fully offensive left back, add someone that is almost as dangerous with the ball as Jaime, because it's going to add that 1-2 punch on the left side alone is going to be worth the price of admission. And I think that Ivan Jaime he's obviously he stepped on the field. I think we could all tell he was the best player on the pitch for Montreal. I think that goes without saying. And now it's just a question of surrounding him with the right people, surrounding him with the right decision makers, and not necessarily catering to his style, but elevating it. And that's only done if you start really investing. I think 6.97, I think is fair for someone that only played like half of the minutes available to him since he got there. I loved every second of it. In fact, I wanted to be even more selfish.
All right. I would say I'd give him a 7.5 just based on, and again, it's a small sample, but if I just base myself on what he did on the field, it wouldn't be that high. What I'm basing myself is the bigger picture of things, Elias, because I think CF Montreal kind of set a standard. They send a message to the fans with the Ivan Jaime signature. They said, forget the past. We're gonna jump on opportunities and we're gonna get players that have European experience. That yes, they're gonna be expensive, just like Hennady Sinchuk. They're gonna be expensive, but they have the potential for more. Now, one of my favorite parts about Ivan Jaime, and you know this very well, we've seen, and not just everybody knows this very well, how hard it is for European players to adapt to MLS play. It's very physical, not as much, a lot of space, not as much technical as it would be, say, in Europe. But what I love from Ivan Jaime is that from the get-go, he seemed to embrace that playing style. I think one of his first games, if I'm not wrong, was against Toronto, which was one of the more physical games, especially going up against Mr. Richie Larea, right? And he almost
owned that shit.
He embraced the let you guys want to play rough, we'll play rough, and I don't care. And that's what happened with Hennady Sinchuk. He didn't necessarily embrace at the beginning, and he got injured because of the physicality. I mean, we talked about in the show when Hennady Sinchuk first started, it felt like the MLS veterans were like, let's pick on the new kid, right? And let's be a little throw him around a little bit. Ivan Jaime wasn't going to stand for that shit. And that's something I really liked. And that made other teams respect him a little more. And instead, double him up or just kind of shift the defense. It's like, it's the first time in a long time, I think, since the Wilfred Nancy days, that we see opponents saying like, "Oh shit, we actually have to play a certain way when Montreal's coming to play because we have to take away their weapons," which is not something we've seen in the past during the Laurent Courtois time. It just felt like they the teams were just playing basic defenses against CF Montreal. So that's what I really like about Ivan Jaime, is that beyond what he did on the field, it's the kind of standard that they've set for future CF Montreal signings, where they are clearly saying this is where we're heading with the rebuild. It doesn't mean that it's going to be super expensive European players in every position, but they will give it their shot. Now, I think they also admitted to making past mistakes, and we're not going to talk about that now, but there were players that might have left the team, and we're going to talk about that now, Elias, right? The departed. We talked about it last time. We talked about it in the about Joel Waterman and George Campbell. This time, since we're talking about the midfield and the attacking, we're going to talk about Nathan Saliba, who was transferred out this season to Belgium. Looking back now, of how this season ended, do you think this was the right move for the team, Elias, for Saliba to leave when he left?
Look, he was gone either way, right? He was going. Whether it was at the end of this season or whether it was, at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of the European calendar, sorry, or at the end of this season, he was not seeing 2026 in Montreal. That's just the reality of it. And so I think that they found the best deal they could. I still think I would have preferred for them to wait after the Gold Cup, because we saw how well he played at the Gold Cup. His value would have shot up a little bit. You would have made maybe not necessarily double your money, but you would have added maybe $1 million to his transfer fee, and it would have been worth it. But again, I understand the inclination to get the deal done when the other team wants, because they want him for training camp and they want all the stuff, or they want all their ducks in a row before anything stupid happens. And I get that. I'm just he would have been so fun on this team.
But that's what I mean.
But
Like if he
he would have
signs,
been, yeah, but
yeah,
at the same time, I'm still the kind of guy, that daydreams about having Ismail Kone, Mathieu Chouanière, and Nathan Saliba in the same midfield, right? So look, let's call a spade a spade. It would have been nice to have. This is the reality of having an academy that inexplicably only spawns really good midfielders, um, and doesn't really seem has yet to, at least presently, reliably provide anything else. Um, and that's just, it is what it is. Nathan Saliba was going to be headed to Europe, whether we liked it or not. And would he have featured well in this rebuild? Absolutely. He probably would have been, the second captain behind Samuel Piet next year. And I think he would have worn the armband instead of Prince Owusu. And I think that he would have been well on his way to becoming Samuel Piet, in terms of not just his stature in the team, but his stature in the entire soccer community of Montreal and Quebec. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate that he's not here, because he is excellent. But I'm also happy to see that he's gained the recognition he deserves.
yeah. I mean, similar to the Ismail Kone situation, I feel that maybe Nathan Saliba left a little bit too early. We don't know all the conversations that went in the background, but we do know that, like, at least he wanted to stay here for a little bit more, but it just didn't work out that way. And I think that it's important to note that, if given the situation that the team is declaring a rebuild, you're absolutely right, Elias. You sign a player like Nathan Saliba to a long contract, and you make him part of that rebuild. You make him part of, the guy that speaks Marco Donadel's language. Um, the World Cup is right around the corner. I think that he's going to have he has mountains to climb in Belgium, where it's a different level of competition, and he's a rather unknown still, as
I
a
mean,
Canadian
I just
midfielder.
looked. He's played 13 games this season. Anderlecht is in third place. So I mean,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
getting the trust.
Yeah, so, and again, it does help that Olivier Renard is there and knows someone like Nathan Saliba. But again, it would have been nice to have him to be part of one of the cornerstones of this rebuild. But it ended up being the way it did. I think he had a great season. I think it was nice to see him grow in front of our eyes as from an academy kid to being a solid midfielder next to Samuel Piet. But I'm sure he's going to do great things. Now, we have a little bit of a surprise for you guys, right? Because we asked some of our fellow colleagues to give us their take on CF Montreal, on the CF Montreal season. And they were kind enough to contribute to today's show. Now, for those of you that are listening to us in audio, you guys are going to see that some of the guys, they speak to us and they gave us their take in French. If you want to understand, what they're saying, I did go ahead and I added some subtitles to it in English, so you can always go into the video portion of our show and just see what they said through subtitles.
Que je retiens, très difficile, 2 victoires en 17 matchs à domicile, tu peux pas gagner. C'est quoi l'ambition de ce club-là? Même après avoir entendu le bilan de fin de saison, je suis pas convaincu que le club s'en va dans la bonne direction. Est-ce qu'on a répondu à vos questions? Pas convaincu non plus. Le fait saillant de la saison 2025, c'est une lettre. C'est une lettre aux partisans pour dire faut qu'on soit meilleur, la reconstruction. C'est pas un jeu, c'est pas un arrêt spectaculaire, c'est pas un but qui sortait de l'ordinaire, non. Le fait saillant de la saison 2025, c'est une lettre 8,5 par 11 pour vous dire que nous sommes en reconstruction. Par contre, San Diego finit premier dans l'Ouest à leur première année d'existence. C'est quoi les ambitions de ce club-là qui, on sait, perd de l'argent année après année? Je ne suis pas convaincu que ça s'en va dans la bonne direction. Amenez-moi des joueurs de qualité pour la saison prochaine, de grâce. Merci.
Salut tout le monde. On m'a demandé de faire une petite vidéo d'une minute max pour parler de la saison du CF Montréal 2025. Ouf, il y a tellement de choses à dire en si peu de temps, mais la saison 2025, c'est pratiquement une saison d'expansion un peu pour Lucas Saputo et son staff. Une saison d'apprentissage. C'est la première fois vraiment là, qu'ils ont les mains dedans puis qu'ils sont exposés avec leurs propres décisions et leurs choix. Donc oui, c'est une saison où ils ont, j'espère, appris beaucoup, qu'ils ont surtout appris, ils ont une humilité d'apprendre de leurs erreurs, de voir qu'est-ce qu'il faut vraiment prioriser pour avoir une équipe compétitive. Puis pas seulement utiliser l'excuse du budget pour justifier un peu leur classement, utiliser justement le budget comme outil pour éviter de prendre pour les prochaines saisons, puis présentement ça va être extrêmement important, éviter de prendre des risques non nécessaires. Quand tu as peu de budget, il faut que chaque dollar soit bien dépensé et j'espère que Lucas et son groupe vont avoir appris cette saison que les prises de risques, les second guess sur des joueurs à gauche et à droite, c'est pas vraiment une priorité pour ce club-là. Ils sont mieux d'aller chercher des joueurs de moindre qualité, mais d'avoir la certitude d'un certain niveau de qualité sur le terrain. C'est ce que le club a besoin pour la saison 2026.
Yo, Max Truman dans lescoulisses.com pour mes boys chez The Ball is Around Montreal. Shout out à Andy Coronado qui cette année a pris un step-up pour son game soccer, qui était présent souvent aux entraînements, puis grosse game, Elias Grégoriadis aussi, souvent aux entraînements, souvent au match, couvrir le club, donc shout out les boys. Andy, tu m'as demandé de te résumer la saison 2025. Je pense que ça va être le même mot pour tout le monde, difficile, décevant, reconstruction, doute, on peut y aller avec n'importe quoi. C'est la pire saison de l'histoire du club, ça a été le fun de la couvrir quand même parce qu'il y a eu un peu d'histoire. C'est sûr qu'on s'attendait à mieux. C'était une jeune équipe et je pense que les jeunes dirigeants pensaient pouvoir vendre facilement des joueurs, que simplement avoir des jeunes joueurs qu'on n'achète pas trop cher, on leur donne des minutes puis on peut les revendre après à gros profit. Je pense qu'on avait oublié que ça prenait un corps solide, des vétérans de l'expérience alentour de ces jeunes-là, puis que pour pouvoir vendre et développer des jeunes, il faut gagner. Ça prend des bons vétérans alentour. Je pense que c'est ce qui a manqué cette saison au CF Montréal. À la fin, on l'a réalisé. Dans le bilan d'après-saison, on en a parlé aussi. Je pense qu'on verra plus une équipe aussi jeune, où il n'y aura pas de mentor pour entourer les jeunes, puis que on est conscient qu'il faut gagner, puis que pour gagner, ça va prendre plus de vétérans et plus de vieux. ça a été aussi une année de changement, de changer la façon complète de faire au com. On est allé avec Assun Camara puis Alex Panton. On a remplacé l'ancienne garde, c'est-à-dire Samia puis Patrick Vallée, qui n'étaient pas des mauvaises personnes, mais qui étaient dans l'ancienne façon de faire ou qui n'avaient peut-être pas livré ce que le club voulait pouvoir livrer en 2025. On a senti que la direction en haut de Assun puis Alex était plus ouvert à essayer des choses. On l'a vu avec les vidéos de Luca Saputo, du Mercato, etc., des problèmes qu'il y avait, puis ce genre de communication-là. Je suis convaincu que Pat Vallée a voulu la faire à un moment donné ou un autre, mais que les portes étaient fermées, que la mentalité n'était pas là à ce moment-là. Alors là, on ouvre, on a des nouvelles personnes qui ont des nouvelles idées, puis on sent que les gens sont prêts à suivre en haut d'eux autres, fait que c'est tant mieux. Je te dirais, mon joueur préféré, c'est pas difficile, ça a été Prince Owusu, qui, après le camp et après les premiers matchs, on pensait que c'était un flop. Ça a finalement été le joueur par excellence du club, haut la main. Il n'y a même pas personne qui était en compétition avec Prince Owusu, de par son jeu sur le terrain, de par son leadership dans un groupe qui en manquait. On a eu de besoin, on a échangé des gars qui avaient du leadership. On a eu Sam Piet qui était blessé, donc du leadership, on n'en avait pas beaucoup. Et Prince Owusu en avait, puis il était sur le terrain, c'est une bonne chose. Et je te dirais que mon joueur que j'ai le moins aimé cette année, parce que tu me l'as demandé, c'est Giacomo Vrioni. La déception au niveau du salaire payé, au niveau de la place qu'il prend sur la masse. C'est un joueur d'EP, il n'a pas joué. On a vu qu'il était bon. Là. Quand il jouait, il n'était pas mauvais, mais il n'a pas joué. La première chose, c'est que quand tu es payé, on veut que tu joues des minutes. Il n'en a pas joué, ça c'est plate. Et l'autre truc, c'est qu'il y a eu beaucoup de drama alentour de Vrioni. On n'a pas toujours parlé ouvertement, mais il n'aimait pas ça quand on prenait telle photo de lui à l'entraînement. Il n'aimait pas ça quand on disait telle chose. Il ne nous parlait pas tant, les médias. Il venait nous faire un peu d'attitude. Donc, ça a été ma déception. C'est pas grave, là. J'ai bien dormi ce soir, mais tu me demandes mon joueur décevant cette année, je pense que c'était lui. Et j'ai espoir que 2025 sera mieux. On gagnera plus de matchs, on se battra pour une place en série. Je pense pas qu'on va avoir accès au championnat, puis je pense pas qu'il va y avoir un trophée, pour reprendre les mots de Gabriel Gervais, mais j'ai espoir que ce soit mieux en 2026. Puis autant moi, dans les coulisses, The Ball is Round Montreal, tous ceux qui couvrent le club, les autres podcasts, etc., je pense qu'on mérite une meilleure saison. Ça a été quand même difficile cette année.
Hello, fans of The Ball is Round. Hope you're all doing fine and still listening to the amazing podcast hosted by Andy Coronado and Elias Kogriadis. Always a great fun to watch or listen. So they asked me to give you a few words and give you my take on the 2025 CF Montreal season. So I'll start, there's a few questions. So the first question was, what was my take on the season in general? Disappointing, very, very disappointing season. As a fan now, because I'm no longer a member of the media, I'm not going to say I was expecting more, but let's say I wasn't expecting to have a season as bad as this one. I understood a bit the model of CF Montreal and the way it was presented. But at the same time, I think the team forgot to be competitive, forgot to make sure to maintain a level of competitiveness that's required in the MLS. So it was very disappointing. At the same time, the question was, what was the turning point? Honestly, I think the turning point was to get rid of Laurent Courtois that early. I'm not saying that he would have succeeded. I don't know that I don't have a crystal ball, but I think it was a bit too early to get rid of him that fast. We should have given him some time. What did I like about the season? I like the fact that they changed their point of view. Late in the season, saying, "Oh, you know what? We are going to make investments." Ivan Jaime coming in, the young boys with Escobar, Sinchuk. This is interesting. What I didn't like, I already talked about it. Favorite player, I'm maybe going to surprise someone. People, of course, Prince Owusu was great and he did the job, but for me, it's Luca Petrasso. I was very, very surprised by Luca Petrasso. I think he had a very good season as left back. I think he was the best performer this season. He was consistent. He was very good. I liked him. Of course, I say very good. The team was bad, so it's hard to be very good, but I liked what I saw from Luca Petrasso. And least favorite player, honestly, I don't like, giving a name, but I will because that player is no longer here. It's Tom Pierce. I just don't understand what they saw in this player. I understand you know how to cross the ball and you know how to take free kicks, okay, but that's not enough. That's not enough at this level. Last but not least, I'm expecting continuity on what Lucas Aputa presented for 2026. A bit more of veteran presence. I mean, good veteran presence. I hope a very good transfer market, and hopefully a team that's gonna fight for a playoff place next year. I think they can do that. I think they have a good core right now. To just need 3-4 additions, and I think they can be a playoff contender. This is it. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Man, it feels good to see some of these people. But look, guys, a big thank you to Gavino De Falco from IMFC Radio, Nilton George from Couscous Piri Piri, Maxime Truman from Dans les Coulisses, and last but not least, the GOAT, Harry Raphael, for sending us their take. Elias, it was a mix, right? Like some of them are very positive, some of them are maybe a little same thing, another year. What are your thoughts of the season overall? We're pretty much the questions we're about to answer are the questions that we asked our guests. So I'm going to ask you, what were your overall thoughts of the 2025 season?
I think it's important to remember the expectations that went into the season, right? They had brought in a new designated player. They brought in a relatively unknown but supposedly very promising 18-year-old, and they brought in who I believe, and I still believe, is one of the most promising young center backs in MLS. And so you take that, and then you add, Prince Owusu, who's decent. You add 3 relatively unknown trialists who come into Petrasso, Craig, and Sealy, and you take all that and the good vibes and the momentum from the end of last season, and expectations are justified in being relatively high. Now, can anyone really at the beginning of the season expected this to be the worst season in MLS in Impact and CF Montreal history? Obviously not. So I think the fact that expectations were so high at the beginning of the season make this season seem even worse, because on paper, I don't think their offseason was that bad. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. The problem is those three big names I mentioned at the beginning all showed up to training camp injured, and all struggled with injury throughout the entire season to varying degrees, but all still struggled with injury. And then on top of that, you did not replicate any of the good things that happened last year. In 2024. Nothing was the same. Because even when Laurent Courtois was in charge, the team was much more negative. The soccer was much more conservative. It was not this, and I get it, you're on the road, but they played the same level of soccer on the road last year. They did the same stuff as they did at home. And so I think from the start, the season was cursed. And as some of you may know, I was part of the Wooden Spoon Collective. And they asked me the same thing. Was there a moment where you realize, oh, the season is done? And it's like, no, because the season was bad. And at no point did I see it getting better. It was just bad, and it stayed bad. So, yeah, I think to summarize it in a sentence, bad, and it stayed bad.
Okay. For me, I thought that the season was going to crap at the beginning. Elias, I want you to think of this, okay? So you said that there were 3 players that went into the offseason and came into camp already injured, including Caden Clark. I think that he got injured during training camp because of the
That's
US.
true.
Elias, when you go to a store, you go to Marshall's, you go to whatever store you go, where do you go to find the cheapest things? The cheapest things in the store? You're gonna go to the clearance section, right? Where everything is that's where the cheapest stuff is, right? Most of the time, these things that are on clearance Why are they on clearance? Because they're broken, they're used, they've
There's a new
been
model.
returned. They've been returned. You know, there's a billion things, right? It's obsolete, whatever it may be. That's why they're so cheap. Now, this is usually the reason why I give this example is because that's exactly what happened with CF Montreal. With a lot of these players, they got bargains. They went to the clearance aisle where they said, okay, well, we're gonna get these cheap players that had at some point had the potential to be really, really good, but they're not good now, and they got hurt or whatever. So let's jump at the opportunity for it to be cheap, and let's hope that they produce better when they're here on with Montreal, which at the end of the day ended up not being the case. You got a lot of players with full potential, but that never really panned out.
Yeah.
So my thoughts on the season overall was one that it was bound to be a failure. It was bound, especially after being eliminated yet a second year in a row from the Canadian Championship by Forge, and Leagues Cup was a complete mess. But yeah, it was about to be a real big mess. I don't think before George Campbell there was any real potential for any players to be sold. Everybody was keeping their eyes on Nathan Saliba, but even he had a rough start to the season. But the letter is a defining moment because that's when the team said to themselves, okay, guys, it's not a complete waste of a season. We're writing a letter to say that we're going to fix stuff. So I think that's where it was the defining moment where they admitted that it was wrong. Patrick saying that it would be more a village de valeur instead of Marshalls. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Patrick. But but essentially it was that. That's what I thought. My overall thoughts, right? That they found that this season, because Elias, imagine that we finished this season the way it finished, but there was never any declaration of a rebuild.
Yeah.
This season, 2025, is a waste. It is a literal wasted year. But this time, you can't consider this year a waste because there was the letter, and there were some importing signings after the letter, including Ivan Jaime. So yeah, I think it's kind of a year with a lot of negatives, and very few positives. But if you focus on the positives that there were in this season, they're pretty big. They're not that many, but they're big. The positives that this team showed. So we'll talk about what we're looking forward to 2026. Favorite player for 2025?
Do I have to answer that? I'm gonna go with Luca Petrasso. I think he was the most consistent player this season.
How do you
He knows his shit. I think he was the most consistent player this season, and I think that in a season so bad, that has to be commended. Where at no point did I think that he was actively a liability on the team, and I think every single other player was a liability at some point this season.
And Robbie says, we will see, Andy. But
we will wait and see. Quote him properly if you're going to quote him.
We will wait and see. But my favorite player was actually Brandon Craig. And I'll say why is because I think that he came in as a trialist. He didn't know what the hell, he was going to do that season. He had little to no expectations. And he ended up playing several positions for the team in different formations with the Laurent Courtois, Marco Donadel change. He had to adjust quickly, and I thought he did. Again, I'm not going to say that he was the best player of the season, and I think both of you and I are kind of staying away from Prince Owusu because it's the obvious choice. Everybody loved what Prince Owusu did this season. He deserves the MVP by far. But I like what Brandon Craig did, and I thought he was an important backup. Patrick says that he loves Joel Waterman. Okay, maybe in 2022.
Bullying.
Least favorite player. This one's tough.
I don't want to copy Hattie verbatim, but I feel like no. Sunusi, unfortunately.
Breaks
my heart. It breaks my heart. Everyone, you guys know how much I love Sunusi. You know how highly I rated him. This season was not it. His fitness was a problem. It continued to be a problem throughout the entire season. Whenever he got onto the field, granted, a lot of the times when he came onto the field, they were chasing the game or the game was a mess already. but it just like felt like at no point he was really fully invested in what was happening. And I also wanted to pick someone that hadn't been mentioned before. And it was a mess from day one up until the end. And it's unfortunate because again, you know how highly I rated Sunusi Ibrahim. He's Canchap Ronaldo. He's the second highest goal scorer in Canadian Championship history. But that you can't get by on vibes alone. Not when the team is doing this poorly. And I know that he still has a contract, but I don't think he'll be here next season.
Yeah, well, look, these players were very obviously. I mean, look, I'm just gonna say it, Elias. I'm gonna say the same thing as Hattie, but I'm gonna maybe expand on it a little bit more because beyond the skills that we're talking about, him just being able to cross, and once that option is over, he's done. It's everything else that happened. I mentioned it last show, right? I mentioned in him being labeled as one of the facts, one of the reasons why Laurent Courtois was laid off the team. His omission of the team, but yet he never did anything to improve his situation. There was that story that came out that he left the team to go, I think, to one of his family's wedding in England in the middle of the season. And it's one of those things that I understand, but when you make these plans, you're a professional soccer player. You know when your season begins and starts, and you know how important you can be for a team. But if you're booking yourself for vacation during during a trip, I think who was it from Inter Miami that did it recently?
I have
The
no
Paul,
idea.
the Paul that went to like a friend's wedding
But
or concert.
Miami's a different story, man.
Yeah,
Miami,
yeah.
they do whatever the hell they want,
I'm
man.
putting
There's
Tom
no
Pierce and Nicole
accountability at
in the
that
same.
club.
Yeah.
It's literally just like the inmates run the asylum, man. They could do whatever the hell they want in that club. They get no repercussions.
But anyways, Tom Pierce will get percussion that he gets my least favorite because again he adapted so poorly to the change in the scheme.
That's fair.
Didn't really seem to fit with his teammates either. He never really seemed to find his place throughout the year. And honestly, he had a whole offseason, Elias. He had a whole
Yeah.
offseason in Montreal. He was healthy. He was not hurt. And yet he just, at his age, I don't know how old he is now. I think he's 23, 24. Maybe a little older.
Tom Pierce? No, he's like mid to late 20s now.
Yeah, there you go. So he's technically a veteran in the team, and he didn't play like one or act like one. So turning point of the season, I think we both spoke about that already. But what do you expect from CF Montreal in 2026?
Continuity, right? They had a good, I'm not going to say great, I'm not going to say terrible. They had a good summer transfer window. They brought in good players, Efrain Morales, Tomas Gillier, Ivan Jaime, Bode Hidalgo. Those are good signings. You got a starting level keeper. You got a potential starting level center back, a very good competitive right back, and a designated player attacker. Good. Continue with the next stuff. All right. That has to be it. I'm not going out here and saying MLS Cup and Canadian Championship and all that shit. No, let's be honest here. I want them to, at the very least, again, standards are in the toilet, but at least make it to decision day without being eliminated from the playoffs, right? And yeah, look, again, I want them to have a good offseason this winter, and I want them to be at least in the fight for a play-in spot. I think that is important. Because then in 2027, again, this is a rebuild. In 2027, you're saying, okay, I'm fighting for top 5.
Me for 2026, I just want this team to raise their standards in every phase of their as a club. When it comes to media communication, when it comes to the way that they communicate with the fans, the way they engage with them. I'm not just talking about the field. In the field, yes, you want to see proper soccer, proper players that seem to understand Marco Donadel's message. I want to see a better coach in Marco Donadel. I don't want him being suspended. We can laugh all we want about his yellow card accumulation because it's funny, but at the end of the day, and I mentioned this when I was in Canada, said that when you're coach and you're not present, it makes all the difference. Regardless if you have your replacements and your replacements are just as good as you're not there. And I expect better from Marco Donadel, and I expect better from his staff because his staff and him need to find something that works so that Marco Donadel doesn't keep getting fucking yellow cards every time there's a game, right? So I expect a more disciplined team. a team that knows how to control a Joel Waterman when he's starting to get heated. Like you just want better, higher standard of a team, a club that is run not just by competent coaches, but players that also hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
Elias, that brings CF Montreal to an end for 2025.
Wow.
Patrick Riley says another DP attacker or midfielder, another high-level U22 initiative and some experience. That's probably 2 transfer windows. You're not wrong, and that's definitely, like we mentioned it several times in this show, it's
Baby
about setting
steps.
standards, setting standards, and that's going to be setting standards. Ivan Hyman needs to be a standard. Henadi Senchuk needs to be a standard. These players that you're going to be signing and the ones you're getting rid of need to say out with the old, in with the new, but the new can't be like the old. It has to be really new and a new kind of mentality that this club is going to be moving forward. As I was saying, 2025 is finished for CF Montreal. We're going to continue doing the podcast about other topics and anything that comes up with CF Montreal, but 2025 is finished. The postmortem is done. So before we move on to our last topic of the day, just going to get a quick shout out from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. Hello, the Ball is Rounders. This show is sponsored by AR Design. I can tell you that in my case, as you can see in my background, I need some change. This is why I reached out to, my wife reached out to Allison from AR Designs to bring some change in my space. You can't see it now, but over the next few weeks, this room is about to get a little funky with the way it looks. I thought Allison will come to my place and turn the place upside down right away. But before changing anything, she made sure to really understand what my vision was for our place and what budget we were working for. And based on that, she gave us some advice and some ideas as to what our place could look like in the future. And that's when we knew that we had reached out to the right person. Like a soccer team working together for the perfect goal, AR Interior Design coordinates every detail of your interior design project, so your home comes together beautifully. From concept to final touches, Allison makes sure every element works in harmony. Visit ardesign.ca today to see her latest interior design project, or follow the links that you see below me on her Instagram, email, or the website, or you can just find the links on the YouTube description. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, AR Design. Alrighty then, so we're going to move on to the last topic of the day. So yesterday, Roses FC played their first leg against AFC Toronto for their playoff game, which they lost 0-2 in Stade Boréal at home. Elias, this doesn't feel good. I mean, look, let's just kind of look back. Like heading into the playoffs, what did you want to see out of Roses FC?
Competitiveness. I wanted to show everything that they had learned over the course of the season, and I wanted them to start on the front foot. They did none of that. The 3 things I asked for, the 3 things I wanted to see, I got none of it. So yeah, no, obviously it's extremely disappointing. We'll get into a bit more detail, right now. But going into the game, that's all I wanted to see, was them to show a team that they had a relatively mixed history with over the course of the season, that they're not going to show up just to get pushed around and confirm that Toronto's making the final.
Right. And you actually do have the lineup for us of the game, right?
I do, yeah.
To show us. And this is important. The reason why we want to show you guys the lineup is because at goalie, we had Anna Karpenko. At the right back, we had Haley Whitaker, Lucy Capadonna, Stephanie Hill, Megan Sauvé in a back 4. And then we had Chloe Minas, Ali Hess in midfield, Cherim Kang as a right winger, Charlot Bibot on the top, Laurie Thibault on the left, and Noémie Paquin back at the top. So this is the lineup that they give us for the first leg of the game. Is this the strongest lineup for a playoff game, in your opinion? You have Tanya Boychuk, to me, in my opinion, probably one of their best players on the bench.
Arguably their best player, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, her fitness was a little bit up in the air towards the end of the season, right? She was doing some load management. If that really was the concern and they were saving her for the second leg, then she came on at halftime, right? So maybe that was the case. But either way, I think Noémie Paquin had a fantastic first half. So like whoever was up top, Tanya Boychuk not being at striker didn't really change it for me. My bigger problem was, is this a strong starting 11? No, because Tanya Boychuk's not on the field. But if Tanya Boychuk was not available, then yes, it's a strong 11 in my eyes, at least.
Yeah.
Because again, Lars Schenk is also injured, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some key pieces missing in that lineup, and it's a little bit worrisome because Toronto is a solid team, and Toronto's not healthy either. They've had some pieces that are out too.
That's also a rotated lineup that they had yesterday.
Yeah, and but they showed up. It's just about wanting it more. Lights. I think I've said it 3 times in this show in 3 different episodes. It stands out to me that one of the players, I believe it was against Calgary, that said we just wanted it more than the Roses, and and I'm thinking, how much more? And now, when I spoke to Marinette Pichon recently, a few days ago, when we had the movie premiere for The Pitch, which, by the way, guys, anybody that appreciates the NSL, Roses FC, highly recommend you go watch the documentary. I don't know where it's available now, but go watch it. Anyways, we had the opportunity to speak with Marinette Pichon, and I asked her, Marinette, when we spoke, because she was on our show, The Ball is Round, we hadn't played a game yet, right? Roses FC were 0-0. And you told us how excited you were about the team, and how excited you were to get the whistle started. And I asked her, I was like, what have you learned from our interview to today when you're about to head into playoffs? And she told me, she was like, I learned that we didn't actually have an identity. We didn't have an identity as a team. And now we have and somewhat of an identity. But when I saw them play, not just yesterday, but the past few weeks, the past few leading up to the playoffs, it feels like a team with no identity, Elias.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
It felt like, and again, yesterday, it felt like they were just figuring it out as they went along. You're 100% right. And this team is very good. You had concerns about whether or not it's a playoff team. They're 100% a playoff team, but they're not good enough that they can get by on just talent alone. You need work ethic. You need tactical acumen. You need everything working, together to deliver the best possible product. And they're not. And I think that is probably the biggest thing, is understanding who they are as a team and what they need as a team. Because the season, if they magically come back, not magically, it's 2-0, right? It's not the end of the world. If they come back against Toronto and they even go on to win the title, that doesn't erase the fact that they need serious help in a bunch of different phases of play, right? Both depth and starting caliber help. So, identity or not, the players on the field are not good enough to just vibe, just on vibes alone, be like, okay, we're gonna win now.
Yeah,
they were at the beginning of the season, but we said, right? Remember at the beginning of the season, they said they were playing. They were outworking everybody. They were more prepared. They were in mid-season form already, and everyone else wasn't. But when teams figure out their identity and they start gelling, what do you have to level up? And they didn't. They didn't level up.
Yeah, I mean, look, this team, you said some of the things that they're lacking. One of the things that I've noticed, Elias, and you see this a lot in CF Montreal, you see this in the MLS, you see this in Europe. When a player messes up a play, and it's clearly that they messed up, it's not out of luck, it's not something, you'll see their teammates, their coaches right away in camera, in front of the camera, in front of everybody. You fucked up. You did something wrong. They'll sometimes it's exaggerated, right? And we call that accountability. And that's something that I haven't seen from Roses FC, at least the players on the field. Whenever there is a clear mistake, a clear error, or somebody not, I don't see any accountability. Nobody's calling anybody out. Everybody's just like, okay, we made a mistake. I guess we'll do a corner. I guess there's no real accountability. Now, obviously, we're not in those conversations in the locker room. We don't know what's going on. But there has to be some show of, somebody has to take charge of that situation. I don't think that the captains right now, Megan Sauvé and Tanya Boychuk's not even on the field during half of that game. They're really that voice that's going to be the loud ones calling people out, right? And that's something that you need more on the field. It's a little bit worrisome. Today, if you ask me if I'm confident that they might come back from that 2-0 down, I'm not. I'm really not. And not just because I'm not going to say because it's a lack of talent. I think they do have the talent in Noemi Paquin and several players that we mentioned in the show. But it's just a lack of accountability and the lack of clarity as to who Roses FC are as a team.
And one of the biggest problems of that, or one of the biggest is complacency, right? Because you look at the starting 11 that basically hasn't changed all season. And the only changes that have come to the starting 11 are transfers, right? Chloe Minas and Jerem Kang are the only two differences from the starting 11, and obviously Latif Abdou, who left, are the only major changes to the starting 11 that we've seen basically every week, because the bench players have not done enough to force any kind of competition. So when you have a player like Jerem Kang, who I love, again, I love Jerem Kang, she misses a breakaway with she could have stopped, looked around to see who was there, and then actually shot on target. When you're down 1-0 to tie the game and she misses the net completely, there's no who's going to take Jerem Kang's spot. Nobody's going to take her spot. She's the most talented player on the field, most talented player on the team. No one's going to take her spot. But again, I see that miss again. I'm like, I need Jerem Kang at the 10. She misses too many easy opportunities. I need her in the middle of the park creating. I don't need her finishing. But that's a question. That's an issue for the postmortem, not for the issue right now.
And we will have a postmortem.
We will have it's gonna be much more discussions to be had there, because this is an actual competitive team with like standards. Yeah. But Jeremy, that sounded a lot meaner than it was supposed to be. You know what I mean? But that's the problem right now, is that the people on the bench right now, are you legitimately going, if you're not playing well, you're benched? Besides Julia Lees,
nobody else.
Who else on the bench can actually start?
Yeah, if you take out Chloe Minas to put Felicia Raw, you're not gonna say
it's a big drop. It's a big drop.
Yeah, game changer, definitely coming. And then this team is definitely stepping in. No, there's none of that, and that's serious. Seriously, it comes down to assembling the team the right way, finding the right pieces. And right now, it's just pieces that don't work together. And when one of them is down, the rest of the team goes down. So it's really bad. So down 2-0 after losing at home, should Roses FC be concerned?
Yeah.
I think they need to be very concerned.
Toronto managed this game. Forget tactically, forget physically, psychologically, Toronto managed this game perfectly. When you're on the road, especially when you're on the road and you are the team that is quote unquote rated higher, you are the quote unquote better team, you have to kind of put any doubt aside as fast as possible, because the longer this game goes, especially when the home team is playing, the more confidence is going to swell, the more the crowd's going to get behind them. 8 minutes it took them to score. 3 minutes it took them to get their first chance. Psychologically, they were prepared for this game. They knew exactly what they had to do. They started on the front foot right away. And Montreal, the only thing they had to not do was concede inside the first 10 minutes and grow into the game. Absorb the pressure, grow into the game, survive the first 10, 15 minutes, and you're going to be fine. In fact, I thought before the beginning of the game, if they managed to survive the first 10, 15 minutes, I thought they were going to win the game. Yeah. Just because of the psychology of it. And Toronto said, I'm having none of that. They had like 2 corners by the 5th minute, and they scored in the 8th. And after that, I said, yeah, maybe they'll come back, maybe they won't. But psychologically, Toronto has the entire advantage. And they did. Because it took Montreal. Yeah, Montreal maybe answered back with some chances. But look at the body language, look at the tempo, everything was going Toronto's way.
100%. I agree with you. And I just think that this is not something that started yesterday, by the way. And I've said in this show, this didn't start yesterday. This started the game
been there for a while.
The game after they qualified officially for the playoffs. I've seen this team plunge in energy and creativity and it was such a bad time for them to plunge, because the rest of the teams in the league instead started getting an uptick. They started putting their shit together and said, we're heading into the playoffs. We're starting to qualify for the playoffs. It's time to get ready for the playoffs. While Rose FC said, we qualified. I think we can kind of test out stuff, try out new stuff. But it just didn't work. And now today, the way Rose FC find themselves, Elias, maybe next week we're talking Rose FC 1-3 to 3-0, 4-0. We're having a whole different conversation. But as of today, after yesterday's game, there is a serious signs of concern. What do they need to bounce back?
They need to finish their damn chances. Because look, we're giving them all this flack for all the stuff they didn't do. One thing they did do was create a lot of chances. And once again, they just refuse to finish. yeah, a lot of them were just like bad luck, or the bounce is half an inch away or half a step away. But some other ones, again, I'm going to go back to the Cherim Kang chance because it's been replaying in my head for the last 24 hours. You don't miss, you can't miss that. Forget you don't, forget you shouldn't, you cannot miss that. That is not something that should be in your vocabulary. And not only that, you missed the target altogether. You know, she is too good of a player to be missing a chance like that in a game that big to tie the game at home, because they score that, everything switches. The crowd gets back into it, the team gets back into it, and there's doubt. There's just a little bit of doubt that creeps into the Toronto minds. And you have the momentum, with a lot of time left, right? But she misses, and everything just go. Everyone's like, "Oh my god, shit!" And then at that, when she missed that, I knew they were losing. I knew for a fact that they were losing. No matter what happened, they were not winning that game. And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. This has been a problem all season. They create a bajillion chances and they score one or two. That's fine. But how many? The game against Calgary was what, the 5-0 game?
Mm-hmm.
Besides that, how many explosions have we seen from a team that creates 4 or 5 golden opportunities a game? How many big explosions of offense have we seen this year?
Not
Barely
much.
anything.
Yeah, not much.
Because they need the quantity.
Yeah. They used to rely, I think at the beginning of the season, they used to rely more on the mistakes of opponents because they would high press, they were high energy, they were in your face about it on the front. I mean, Claire Monniard came out of the gate just, again, suffocating defenders into making mistakes and them capitalizing. But now, as you mentioned, teams have started playing a lot lower. They don't allow Rose FC to high press them. So now Rose FC has to be creative with the way that they build up the attack, and they just haven't found it. And to me, what they need next game to be able to get back into it, they need to play a perfect game in every phase of the game. That means the free kicks, the defense, the offense, the substitutions that are chosen at what time. Robert Rossitoyo needs to have a perfect game coached. The decisions need to be made quick, and they need to be made in a smart manner that you will have to. This is going to be the 3rd game in a row that you play AFC Toronto. At some point, you have to kind of read what their weakness is and how your profile of players can exploit that weakness. We hope that we're going to have a different conversation next week. That's for sure. But for now, I think if Rose FC can't find a way to bring back a game to Montreal, because this is the semifinals. I don't know. Do you know where the finals is? It's not going to be 2 legs either.
It's going to be in Toronto. No, the final is a 1 game in Toronto.
Well, this would have been the opportunity to really, and I know that it was kind of a weird weekend with the transportation issues that they were having this weekend, but at the same time, it would have been a perfect opportunity for the Montreal soccer fans to come pack Stade Boréal, because the reason being is because they are the only soccer team playing right now here in Montreal. Supra is still doing their tryouts. CF Montreal is very well eliminated from playoffs, so there's no chance they're playing. They're the only ones that are actually playing professional soccer in Montreal. So it would have been a great opportunity to kind of catch the trend or whatnot. But it didn't happen. It was a terrible loss. And we hope they bounce back next week. What I do want to say is thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hope you enjoyed tonight's show. We know it was a long one, but it was the postmortem, and they're always a little bit long. As always, the podcast will always be free to listen and watch on all of our platforms. Make sure to check out our Patreon page for exclusive member content and all of our social media platforms for more content. Follow my account as well as Elias's account on Blue Sky, X, Instagram, Facebook. We're everywhere, TikTok. Big shout out to all of you who joined the Patreon this week. And thank you again to all of you who tuned in tonight. And see you next week for episode 245 of The Ball is Round.